Okay, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're in the South Caucasus or in Central Asia. Thank you very much for coming to today's webinar on the BEARR Trust Small Grant Scheme for 2026. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to be saying a little bit to introduce the scheme for this year, and we'll also have a bit of an insight from a previous partner who has delivered a project with SGS funding. My name's Ross. I'm the chair of the BEARR Trust. We also have some colleagues with us here today. Valdoni, who's our program manager, who some of you may have met, and also Anna, who will be able to respond to any questions you have over the course of the webinar. I'm going to be speaking in English for the next few minutes, but we do have translation into Russian as well. So if you want to listen to the translation in Russian, just click on the button at the bottom of the screen and choose Russian translation. If you have any problems in accessing the translation, please just put a message in the chat, and then we'll try and deal with that and make sure that you can get that. So a little bit about today, a bit of an introduction to this year's small grant scheme, some information on how you can apply to us. After that, Meerim Osmonalieva, the director of Oasis in Kyrgyzstan, will give a bit of background on her experience of developing and delivering a small grant scheme project, and then there'll be opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. You might find that you think of questions during the course of the presentation, so if you want to put your questions in the chat, please do. Some of them we might be able to answer straight away. If not, we can pick them up towards the end, but feel free to put questions in the chat whenever you think of them, and you're very welcome to put questions in Russian or in English. I'll say a bit just at the start about the BEARR Trust. Some of you may be familiar with BEARR and may have worked with us before. For those of you that haven't, we're a UK-based charity. We've been working since the early 1990s in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, mainly supporting smaller community-based organisations that are working in health and well-being in those countries. Our main focus is on smaller organisations, those where a bit of CCORN funding can help them to grow and develop new services and new organisations. To do that, we run a small grant scheme, and we've been running our small grant scheme since 2006, so for quite a long time now, providing CCORN funding to those small civil society organisations that are working together in health and social welfare. The point about partnership is really important to us, because what we want to encourage is learning between small organisations and working together so that ideas can be disseminated in other places, and so that community organisations can become stronger. So that point about partnership is quite important to us. We run the small grant scheme through regular funding rounds, generally once a year. Each of those are focused on a specific theme that changes from one year to the next. Sometimes we return to themes that we've done in the past. Last year, we awarded 17 grants to different organisations across several countries, and we received 109 applications which supported that. So you can see from there the ratio of applications to grants that we give. Over time, we've tended to give more grants in recent years than we did previously. We try and give as much as we can with the funding that we receive. We're funded by charitable contributions from a number of different places. We do our best to maximise our income, and the amount that we have available to give depends on that. So the small grant scheme for this year in 2026, and this year we're looking for applications for projects in Central Asia and the South Caucasus that are focused on addressing the theme of violence against women and girls. Some of you may remember that we had a similar theme back in 2019. If you delivered a project for us back in, or with our funding back in 2019, then you are very welcome to apply again. Equally, if you're a new applicant, we very much welcome that too. This time, grants are open to community-based organisations in the South Caucasus, so Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia, and then in Central Asia, so Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. The maximum grant that we can offer is £4,000. That roughly equates to about €4,500 or about $5,500. We have quite a fixed round for funding. So in order to apply, you would need to get your application into us by Friday the 13th of March at the end of the day, London time. We're not able to accept late applications, I'm afraid, partly because we tend to get quite a few applications. It takes a while to work through them and to assess them and to make sure that we get back to people in good time with approvals and so on. So please make sure that if you want to apply, you get your application in by that date. So our theme is violence against women and girls. What does that mean? I've put there on the slide the United Nations definition of violence against women. And you can read the description there. It may include those things that I've set out below: domestic abuse, rape and sexual violence, forced marriage, honour-based violence, trafficking, sexual exploitation, harassment at work or in public life, gender-based violence in the context of war or civil conflict. We know that violence against women and girls is an endemic social challenge globally and in the UK, as well as in those countries on which our grants are focused this year. We recognise that there may be a number of partners that are particularly focused on certain groups of individuals or on certain types of abuse that they are seeking to prevent. And certain types of people they're seeking to support, and we recognise there could be a range of different areas of focus. But that's the broad theme. Please make sure that when you apply that your project is addressing the theme. We do get a lot of applications. Sometimes we get applications from people who have a project that they want to get funding for, but they don't really address the theme, or they're not really working in that area. We can usually tell that, and that becomes quite obvious when you read the application. So if your project doesn't genuinely address the theme, don't apply on this occasion. As I said, we recognise that the context and the need is different in different places and communities. We wouldn't necessarily expect the same project in Armenia to the project that we might fund in Tajikistan, for example. So we're not being prescriptive about the kinds of things that we want to fund. But within that, we're especially interested in applications that focus on prevention of violence towards women and girls to support long-term change. Not all projects will be. Some projects may be very much about providing services to the victims of violence, and we are interested in supporting that too. But we're especially interested in projects that focus on prevention. We want to encourage sustainable and community-based solutions. Perhaps where starting off an initiative can lead to something that can be sustainable over time, or perhaps by working with a different group of partners, you can make your existing services more sustainable. We recognise that projects might work with a range of different groups to address violence against women and girls. We would also be interested in projects that involve working with men and boys as well to prevent abuse too, and that's really important. So if you have projects that are thinking about that, then please let us know. But overall, what we're interested in is your understanding of the communities that you're working in and your knowledge of the support that's needed. We want to support projects that support organisations that will work together over the longer term. We want to support projects that can perhaps extend existing collaboration between different organisations, maybe 2 or 3 partners that might be looking to work with somebody else. We also want to learn from projects. Part of the purpose of the small grant scheme is to extend learning and to disseminate that and to make other people aware of it. So we want to build wider networks. So if your proposal is seeking to do that, we'll be very interested in that. And of course, we recognise that you will have past experience. You'll have delivered projects previously, maybe to the same target group, maybe to different groups. You'll have learned from that. So please build on your previous learning, build on that experience and tell us about it. There are some criteria that we follow that all applications must meet these. Please make sure that you follow the guidance. On the BEARR website, you'll find quite detailed guidance notes, so please follow those. And please use the application forms that we've provided. It's quite important that the application is on the application form, because when we review the applications, it makes it much easier to look across all of them if they're all in a similar format. Make sure you address the theme. That's really important. Projects should be a joint project between 2 or more organisations. That could be 2 organisations that are already working together and have a long history of working together. It could be one organisation that has a new partnership with another organisation that it's seeking to develop. We don't mind, but we want to make sure that people are joining up. That's why we encourage work between 2 organisations. The maximum is £4,000 from BEARR. So please don't ask for more than that, because that's the maximum that we can give. And we do seek co-funding as well. So our contribution should be no more than half of total project costs. And I'll explain that in the next slide. When you submit your application, the maximum length is 5 pages, which is basically 4 pages for the application and then 1 page for your budget, which you could also present on an Excel sheet. We try and keep the application short, so hopefully it isn't too difficult to complete. So we try and keep it concise. I'll just say a little bit about funding and the budget, because I mentioned on the previous slide that BEARR will only fund up to 50% of project costs. So if you take the worked example there, the total project value might be £5,000. You might put in 1,000 from your own funds. Another funder might contribute 1,500. BEARR might then contribute the remaining 2,500. So our grant is 50%. However, your contribution can be an in-kind contribution. In other words, you could use a proportion of your rental costs for your premises. You could cost out time that's spent by volunteers. You could cost out time by staff who are already being paid for through some other form of funding. So we don't require that you find 50% of totally new funding and cash to fund our contribution. What we really want to do is demonstrate that there is a commitment from your own organisation and your partners and others to making the whole, and it's not entirely reliant on the BEARR contribution. We recognise that you may need some equipment to deliver your project. So you might need to buy some software, you might need to buy a tablet or a laptop or something like that. That's okay. But that should only be a minority of the requested BEARR grant. So it should only be about 20% of the requested grant. The reason for that is that we really want to fund project activity. we're not really about funding infrastructure and equipment, but we recognise that you may have a need for some of that in order to deliver the scheme. So what are we looking for when we assess the bids? We'll be looking for projects that genuinely address the theme. Critically, what we want to know is what you're going to do specifically, who is going to benefit, and be specific about the group that you see as benefiting. That might be a certain cohort of people. It might be focused on young people. It might be focused on older women. It might be focused on a particular community or a group of villages or something like that. But be specific about who the beneficiaries are going to be, and be specific about why you're doing it. Why is there a need for this project in this place right now? Tell us about that. We'd like to see evidence that you're working together as 2 or more organisations. When we provide the funding, we will provide the funding to one organisation, so we'll provide the funding to the lead, but we'll want to know that you're working together with somebody else. We want to be sure that the contribution that BEARR makes will make a real difference. Our funding is quite small. We're very much focused on smaller and quite often newer community-based organisations. We don't really want to fund large organisations which have substantial budgets from either local donors or international aid organisations, because the amount of money that we give to an organisation that may have, I don't know, $1 million of turnover will be so small that it won't really make a difference. So we're only interested in projects where we know that our grant can make a real difference to you and to your communities. We're interested in projects that are trying to do something new, something imaginative. But we recognise that not all projects will be doing something new. Some projects might be building on what you've already done and perhaps adapting that to slightly different circumstances. So your project doesn't have to be completely original, the first thing that anybody's ever thought of. We're interested if it is, but we're also interested if you've learned from experience and can demonstrate why the project's important. As I say, we want evidence of some other funding alongside ours, but that can be your in-kind contribution. And please also make sure that the project is deliverable. So normally we ask for projects to be delivered in 6 months. We can be a bit flexible about that. Sometimes it takes longer, and that's okay. But we're interested in projects that can go ahead. We're not looking for something that can't be delivered for 3 years or something like that. And the key thing really is that what we're really interested in is your project, what you want to do, and who you're working with. We're not too bothered about perfect bid writing. So if you can be clear about what, who, and why, that's great. We ask for applications in English. We recognise that English is not your first language. That's absolutely fine. If you write your application in the language of your choice and then run it through Google Translate or a similar program, that's fine too. We're quite happy with that. We're more interested in what it is, what the project is. We're not particularly interested in the exact quality of the words. BEARR Trust has a safeguarding policy, which is available on our website. Our policy is that everyone, regardless of age, gender, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or nationality, has the right to be protected from all forms of harm, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. What that means is that we want to ensure that when projects are delivered, there are measures in place to make sure that nobody is harmed as a result of that project. Of course, when projects are designed, and especially in the context of this year's theme, the aim is to reduce harm and to protect, in this case, women and girls, but also other vulnerable people from harm, and that's the goal of the project. But sometimes we know from experience in the UK and in probably all other countries around the world that sometimes, because there aren't proper measures in place, harm is caused by individuals who are in positions of power and authority that should not be tolerated. We want to make sure that there are measures in place that if something's not right, that you have mechanisms to resolve that and to address it. So think about the measures that you can take to protect people from harm, both your own staff, your own volunteers, and the people who will be benefiting from the project. Where you have policies already in place, tell us about them. If you have them on a website or something, put a link to them. But if not, just tell us about what policies you have in place. If you don't have safeguarding policies in place at the moment, that's okay. We recognise that it takes time to develop these things and put them in place. But if your project is successful, we will ask you to put safeguarding measures in place, and we will try and support you in that. What we really want to do is make sure that all the services that we fund are safe and are safe for everybody. And please think about what that means in the context of your project. And we recognise that the legal framework for that will be different in different countries. So we recognise that those specific policies may vary from place to place. I just wanted to say something towards the end, just to explain why our focus this year is on the Caucasus and Central Asia, and why we're not funding projects through the small grant scheme in Ukraine or Moldova this year. The reason for that is that we cover quite a number of countries. Our funding is quite limited in that context, given the huge area that we have to focus on. And of course, across all of those countries that we're working in, the need is very great. So our money can only go a small way. We really want to make sure that those people who apply to us have a good chance of success. So we don't really want to encourage thousands of applications and then only be able to fund, a dozen or 20 of them, because that would mean a lot of wasted work for a lot of people. So we try and target our focus. Having said that, we do have another fund, which is the Ukraine Community Resilience Fund, which is open at the moment and is a rolling programme. So it's always open for as long as we have funds available. That's open to applications for community-based organisations in Ukraine and Moldova that are supporting local community-based resilience in the context of the current war. We continue to welcome applications into the fund. You can find out more on the website. There isn't a standard application form on the website, but get in touch with us. Just email us if you have a project idea. That's very much open, and we welcome applications. We hope that as the small grant scheme develops in the future, we hope that we will make that available to partners in Ukraine and Moldova, and indeed all of the other countries that we work in as well in the future. So the fact that we're not funding projects in Ukraine and Moldova through this specific grant stream this time doesn't mean to say that we won't be doing so in future. It's really just so that we can make sure our funding is targeted and there's a good chance of success for people who apply. Just finally then, just to recap on some of that, we really want projects and applicant organisations to succeed. We want to fund as many projects as we can. We can't fund them all because we don't have enough money to fund them all, but we fund as many as we can within the resources that we have. So we're looking for projects to be successful. We're not looking to reject people. We want to learn from the projects that we fund as well. So if you're successful, then we will ask you to provide a report about the project. We publish some of that learning on our website and within our annual report and so on. And what we're interested in is what works and why. And sometimes we find through projects that actually something that was a good idea actually didn't work very well. And there's learning from that too. So we're interested in whether things are successful or not. We want an open environment where we can think about that. we're not just interested in measuring exactly how many beneficiaries benefited from a certain project. We're interested in what the learning was from that too. As I said before, we're more interested in the quality of the project than perfect bid writing. So think about the project rather than the specific formatting and so on. We can only fund a limited number of projects, and even with a more targeted round this time, there will still be lots of projects that we won't be able to fund. Sometimes, because of the limits on our resources, there are sometimes some very good projects that we're just not able to fund because we don't have the money to do so. If we don't fund you this time, that doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't welcome an application next time. So please don't be discouraged. There will be another round in due course. And then finally, we're interested in learning from you as well. So if you apply, if you have any feedback about the application process, or if you are successful and you deliver a project and you have feedback to us on how we could make the small grant scheme better, how we could provide better information, make it easier to apply, etc., please let us know, because unless people tell us how to improve, we don't know. So we're really interested in feedback from you. All the forms and guidance are available on BEARR.org, so have a look there. If you have any trouble in accessing them, or if you have any questions at any point, please just contact us at info@BEARR.org. We very much welcome questions in English, Russian, and in Ukrainian. Our capacity is limited in other languages, unfortunately. But if you need to, do feel free to put your questions through Translator or similar program and send them to us, and that would be fine. So thanks very much for listening, and good luck with the projects that you take forward. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and hopefully that stops sharing. Yeah. So thank you very much. There'll be some time for questions at the end, but I'll hand over now to Meerim from Oasis in Kyrgyzstan, who will give a bit of a background to her experience of delivering a small grant scheme project. Meerim.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to participate in this kind of session and share our experience. My name is Meerim Osmonalieva. I'm a founder of Oasis Kyrgyzstan. Our organization has been operating since 2008 in Kyrgyzstan. In the main area, we have several programs on supporting at-risk young people in Kyrgyzstan. Basically, we have been working with care leaver support topic for a long time. And we have another huge program on anti-human trafficking, where we provide direct assistance to survivors of course, gender-based violence, but at the same time, we are dealing with victims of sexual abuse, sex trafficking, labor trafficking among at-risk young people, and we have huge program on advocacy. So within these programs, we had a great experience in working with BEARR Trust Fund, where we applied to this opportunity twice in 2022 and also in 2024. Our first project was related to supporting care leavers. And later we also applied for supporting survivors of anti-human human trafficking. Our last project was we were working with social workers in Kyrgyzstan. So we opened our Oasis Center, where we provided support not only to survivors, but also we worked in close relationship with social workers. Why these kind of opportunities so important for organizations like Oasis and you because, for small organizations, even small amount of money is so vital. And with this kind of support, additional support, we can do great things. And my main advice, you are holders of local knowledge. You are holders of your local communities. You know your own people. You have your own network. Please be specific and focused on what you are doing and what kind of impact you are going to make within your communities. For instance, last year, we were during our work with social workers, and pay attention, of course, to your monitoring and evaluation process, because your project can be oriented in providing assistance or support to specific groups, but at the same time, you can notice that your data, which you are collecting, can be useful for decision makers. You can cooperate with state agencies, you can cooperate with local authorities, and please be bold to make impact in terms of advocacy, and also build connections like networks. And this is so vital, and you can indicate in your sustainability these kind of achievements. And in terms of topic, it is so relevant for Central Asia and Caucasus. As you know, every third woman in the world, they experience violence, and violence has different types. And you also should be focused on what kind of violence you are focusing on. And you can also cover females and males, because in our previous project we were more focused on both genders. As you know, also boys also experience gender-based violence, especially among at-risk young people. They can be subjected to not only sexual violence but also labor exploitation and many other types of abuse. In terms of building connections, please also be open to make sure that you are cooperating during this project with crisis centers and how this referral mechanism works, because in Oasis we usually specifically try to foster national referral mechanism in providing direct assistance to survivors. And it can be oriented not only in providing direct assistance, but also how you can do this process more effective, so that victims can have access to proper services. You can work with local authorities or local services, improving this referral mechanism. And also be more specific, just follow in your proposal this SMART concept. When you are setting your goals and objectives, it's so important to be so that they can be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. If you do not have, if you want to, if you have some questions about safeguarding policy, please also be sure to reach out me. I can also share our documents so that you can follow these rules. We are happy to share also this document with you. So we try to follow all this national and international framework in terms of regulatory framework on child protections, also victims protections, and how to deal with if you are dealing with these kind of cases, what kind of education and training you can provide for your staff in terms of countering violence and trafficking and other issues. And also in terms of, I just want to add, last year we had a great impact in terms of during our work with social workers, we had a great chance to cooperate with children's ombudswoman in Kyrgyzstan, and in our center, based on our data, we were able to develop a huge national program together on children's protection. And this national program was adopted by our government and posted on the website of the Ministry of Justice. And this is how we showed that our project is so sustainable, that our data, small data within our project serve for a great purpose. So these kind of examples can be very useful. Thank you. Yeah, just go to our website if you have more questions. You can reach out me also.
Thanks very much, Miriam. That's really helpful and good to get an insight into your work and also the difference that BEARR's funding has made and how to apply. And thanks for the offer of sharing your resources on safeguarding as well. That's great, and it's good to be able to share things across different organisations. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I can't see any questions in the chat. Or so can the other partner not be a registered organisation? So what we want is a partnership between two or more community groups. So that doesn't mean an individual. We wouldn't count an individual as a partner. We would count another community organisation as a partner. However, we do recognise that if there's a new organisation that's being established, it may not yet be fully registered. It might be looking to register. So if you've got something that's just being set up, we would be happy to count that as a partner organisation. But by a partner, we do mean a community-based organisation, so not an individual and not a government department. Anything else?
Ross, there were a lot of questions that I received in chat, but I've answered all. I think there is one that we should cover publicly is the timeline on when the winners of grants can expect the notification that they have been selected for a grant, and when can the project start? As in, I understand it is important for people to plan the timeline of successful projects. So if you could speak about that.
Yeah, sure. So we've got our closing day for applications on the 13th of March. We would then anticipate a little bit more than a month to review them. So we would be able to let successful projects know probably the early part of May. So that's when we'd be able to confirm a grant award. We should then project should then be able to start probably from mid-June, I would say. Some of you may have had funding from us in the past year or two, and there has been quite a delay between when we've approved grants and when we've been able to issue funding. And that's been because of us having to wait for our funding to come in before we could then pass funding on to you. That doesn't apply this year because we've managed to secure funding up front, so we have funds available. So if you work on projects starting mid-June, so there'll be a period in May and early June when we sort out the contracts and so on and make sure that we have your bank details and things like that. Any other sort of frequently asked questions, Anna, that came up? Anything else that might be an answer that lots of people might want?
Another one was about whether the partnership needs to have some sort of documental proof, as in memorandum of partnership or something. My answer in the chat was that we don't require this documentation at the stage of the project application. We basically trust the applicants.
Yes. That's right.
Another question was where to send the applications. I understand it's info@bearr.org, right?
Yes.
There were some questions about the budget, the 50%. I think we covered that, both you did in the slides and I answered in the chat. Another question was about whether the applications can cover the topic of early marriages. You did mention forced marriage. My understanding is that it is falling within the project as long as it's explained how it connects to the topic, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the list of potential issues that I put on that slide isn't supposed to be exhaustive. There'll be other things. So yes, early marriage I would see as being something that we would very much fit within that.
Yep. I don't think there are any more.
Okay.
Once again, sorry, Ross. Once again, we received a question about £2,500 that was used in your slide. So there is a slight confusion between 4,000 of a maximum funding and the example you used with 2,500.
Okay.
So yeah. Maybe you can go back to that.
Yes. So the example was a project that had a total project value of 5,000, of which BEARR contributed 2.5. But the maximum would be BEARR contributing £4,000 to a project worth 8,000. Yeah. Perhaps that would be a better way of putting the example in the slide. But yes, so we can pay up to £4,000, but we want other funding to match that. So if you want £4,000 of BEARR funding, then the project would have an £8,000 value. One thing that I didn't say, and that some people sometimes ask about, is we pay out all of our money is in pounds, and we ask on the application for the value to be expressed in pounds, but we will pay you in a variety of different currencies, usually euros, sometimes US dollars, sometimes pounds if you want them, sometimes the currency that applies in your own country. So there are a range of ways in which we can pay funds. We've got a question from Manush.
Well, hello. I believe I can ask my question in Russian. My question is as follows. Back in 2024, I was having a project with your co-funding, and that was with refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh. And we have such refugees in another town, and they want to be trained in sewing and embroidery. Can we repeat this program, this training, but in another town of our country? Thank you.
So only if it's addressing the theme of violence against women and girls is the answer. So think about whether it meets the theme. The focus of this year's grant scheme isn't specifically on refugees or displaced people as a general group. The focus is very much on violence against women and girls and preventing that. Now, it might be that your project or a variant of it is addressing that and does meet that, in which case that would be welcome. But really think about whether it addresses the theme. There's a question from Nazgul.
Thank you very much. Добрый день. Hello. I would like to tell you that we received our grant from the BEARR Trust in 2020. We're very grateful. If we can apply this year, can we speak about target group as religious leaders? Because we would like to work on counteracting domestic violence. And we would like to focus on the primary psychological support so that we can breed our own local activists, including religious leaders, because religious leaders are those women who are in medrese, in our schools. They are the ones that victims apply to. So can we, in our project, in our grant, speak about the potential training of such people so that they could be providing more professional psychological support to the victims? Thank you.
Yes, potentially. Yes, you could do. We have had projects in the past which have focused on sort of training people who have roles in the community that will be supporting victims and things like that. So yes, I don't see why a project along those lines wouldn't be welcome. I can't see any other hands up. Don't think I'm missing anybody. So is that all the questions that we've got for this morning?
Yes, that's all I have in the chat.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you especially to Meerim for your time this morning. If you have any questions, if anything occurs to you after this, please just let us know. Email info@bear.org, and we'll try and answer your question. And of course, have a look at the website and the guidance and so on. And we very much look forward to hearing from you and receiving your applications, and hopefully approving some of your projects and helping you to support your communities over the next few months. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day.